Ready to start? Okay. Welcome, everybody. Let's see if we can settle down a bit. My name is Nathalie Nebelius. I'm the Member Engagement Manager for Tonic, which is a network for high net wealth individuals, family offices, and foundations who do impact investing globally. And today we're going to talk about social investment on the rise. We're going to have 3 parts to the session. I'm going to explain each part as we go along. But I want to introduce, hopefully, our first speaker, Guillaume, to the stage. And we're going to sit down. So this part, I just want to read the introductory text, actually. So nowadays, the economy and immigration are more than strongly linked. Immigrant founders have proven to build high-growth companies for years. It's a large market that's very untapped. So I'm actually not going to give Guillaume a long introduction because I've asked him to do a 5-minute fire story, which is something that we very often do at Tonic. And it's really about focusing in on more of the heart. Why is he doing this, and how did he come to where he is at this moment? And then we will go more into questions and talking about the different business opportunities that he's doing. So Guillaume, over to you.
Thank you. Last Saturday, Saturday evening, it's about 10:30 p.m. Our son is sleeping. This is good. And we're watching an episode of The Wire with my wife. It feels like it's the first quiet moment that I have this week, so I really want to enjoy it. And then, I'm getting a text message, and it says, "Hey, I gave your name to the president for a Secretary of State position. They might get in touch." What? I actually never considered a career in politics, and I certainly did not ask for it. So I turned to my wife, and she says, "You should probably prepare a list of your superpowers if you have an interview." So I started to send messages to friends and colleagues and say, "Guys, what are my superpowers?" And words started to arrive during the evening. Visionary, very optimistic, and you have empathy. That last one made my wife laugh a lot. I don't exactly know why, but she told me, "I don't think you have empathy. People might think so because you're perceptive, but you did not create Singa because you wanted to help, but because you didn't like the architecture of hospitality. You don't like the way inclusion for migrants and refugees has been created. It's not aesthetic from your point of view. It's very inefficient to try to secure a state by pushing away victims of violence from other countries. It's unfair to ask migrants to contribute more while they don't actually have the right to work or contribute when they arrive. And it's very stupid to try to manage immigration when wars and climate change make it unpredictable." My wife is really smart. And she made me think about the resistance that I got 10 years ago when we first associated refugees and entrepreneurship. People couldn't actually get why these two notion concepts would work together when it actually made a lot of sense to us. And today it's the same, because we're going to associate migration and migrants with finance. After 10 years of success inside Singa, actually associating the two other concepts. We are going to build the first investment fund for migrant entrepreneurs in Europe. And I don't think I do it because I'm nice. I do it because in the period we're living today, we need to bet on resilient people. We need to bet on adventurers. We need to bet on people that can bridge cultures, bridge industries. And in my short experience, people that are able to do that are actually migrant entrepreneurs or diverse teams. In the past 10 years, I've met with migrant founders in 10 different countries. I've seen them fight to get a bank account, to learn a new language, to find a decent place to live, to build a network, one person at a time, to create jobs, to bring value where they arrived, to innovate. But if you don't know what they go through, you might actually think they are really slow at building their venture or their startups. You might even think they represent a risk in terms of investment. But from my point of view, if we continue to invest in the same profile we've been investing in the past decades, looking at what we're supposed to tackle in this world, this is actually taking a bigger risk. I've also seen in these past 10 years a generation of European social entrepreneurs who are tackling inclusion issues. I worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs like Donia, who created Meet My Mama, created access to employment for migrant women. I worked with Raiz from Syria. We created an app to collect metal waste. I could talk to you about all these entrepreneurs all day. But at the end of the day, I still believe that I'm a bit empathetic because I haven't done that for nothing. But I believe my wife had a point. What we need to change now the paradigm about migration. It's not a fight between an open society against a closed one. It's not about being nice versus being an asshole. It's about a fair transition. It's about justice, safety, and the economy. It's bigger than us. We need new rules, new infrastructures, and new role models. We need to invest in the future of the inclusion of migrants and refugees because while migration is scaling up, we are actually not scaling up solutions. This is why, starting in September, I will be fundraising for a better future for all of us by betting on new talents.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing a little bit of your story and background to this. And I'd like, if we could start, and this is one thing we talked about, if you can actually define what an immigrant, migrant, refugee founder actually is, so that we are talking about one thing here.
So refugees are people today that are recognized by the international law. They're forced to flee because of wars or persecutions. We also consider that there's a lot of forced displaced people. So the UNHCR, which is working with refugees, also take into consideration people that have to leave because of climate change, natural catastrophes, and other humanitarian reasons. Most of these people in the world, these are 1 in 95 people today in our world, move inside a country. So they don't cross a border. They just move in Bangladesh. They move into a country. Migrants, there is no legal definition about migrants. You'll have definition about immigrants, but migrants is today defined by international organizations like the IOM. As people who leave the place where they used to live to settle somewhere else, whether it's temporary or it's for a long time. What we are considering as migrants, also for our investment fund, is going to be people who are foreigners in Europe from outside of the OECD, or people who are refugees in Europe.
Okay, thank you. And you did mention this already in your fire story, but maybe you can go back and also talk a little bit about why you think this vertical of the market is so untapped still.
I think it's untapped because of the way we perceive the risk today. I think the metrics of the risk, which is the basis of investment, we take a bet based also on the risks that the financial risk mostly that we might take. And I think what we're living today, it's completely changing that mapping of the risks that we have. So it's an opportunity also for new kind of founders. But I think the way the way we look at these projects today, we look at the time it took them to create the product or the service, and we feel like, well, it's a long time. But we don't take into consideration that maybe they've lost 6 months just to create a bank account. They had to learn a new language. They had to settle, find a new place to stay, which is much more obstacles than actually natives. So you might look at a startup and say it took them 3 years to get to that product, but actually, if they were native, it took them like 6 months. And so they're actually very fast. So I think at Singa, because we've been doing this for 10 years, we have that eye that can help us actually spot the entrepreneurs with a really high potential and scalable products that maybe other funds don't have yet. And what we really hope is that they will achieve that skill.
And so this, of course, goes into kind of the challenges that surrounds this vertical. So how do you think that we can mitigate them? What are some solutions?
I say challenges for the fund or challenges for funders?
For funders.
For funders. I think the fund we're trying to build, it's going to give them financial solution and investment, but it's also technical support that they need. Most of the obstacles, they are legal obstacles, they are cultural obstacles, they are also related to getting the right network at the right time. And so what we're trying to do is build an unfair advantage where we selected the best people to help them on legal, HR, talent acquisition, UX, UI, tech, to help them also develop their product when we believe in the entrepreneurs of the team. And so I think one of the challenges, how you tackle the challenges, is you build a vehicle where you have a platform with all these solutions, and you have the team that knows which one would be the right one at the right time for the founder.
Yeah, so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about this fund that you're launching. So maybe you can just introduce it a little bit more to the audience. And then, describe how that's going to tackle, like you just said, the issues that you see, and maybe also talk a little bit about the struggles that you're having or the things that might be difficult in terms of setting up such a fund.
We've been talking about creating a fund since 2013. Actually, the reason why we built this organization in 2012 was to finance refugee entrepreneurs initially. So we've always connected our activity to finance. Initially, we were more thinking about really more support in terms of finance. We were thinking about crowdfunding. We wanted to solve the problem of love money for migrant entrepreneurs when they start. Because we believed when you settle somewhere else, you might not have all the social capital, so you don't have your friends, family that can actually support you financially when you launch your venture. But we realized that a lot of the migrant startups, they were needing much more than that. And so this is also the reason of this new fund. After we've already created emergency funds with tickets like 10 to 15,000 euros. But the objective now is to be able to do pre-seed and seed stages for also startups with really scalable projects. And so what we had to learn is actually how you create a fund. What are the options? The fact that if you want to create an FPCI fund, you need a management company. And so you can build your own, and it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to be expensive, or you can kind of rent an agreement, or you can work with another existing management company. And I guess in the past 1.5 years, we've been learning mostly about how this industry works, how we can get in. I feel like now we have all the information. and we are in the phase where we select the right management company to work with. We select the right team to be successful, and it's going to be a European fund. The team is going to be based mostly in Berlin and Paris, because this is where we have our biggest team, our biggest deal flow. This is where our incubators and accelerator are set up. And it's going to be, we have a high target of 80 million euros, but we want to do a first closing at 35 million. To be able to do mostly seed investment in the past 5 to 6 years.
Do you want to say something about need of team here, or you don't want to be...
About the team?
Yeah.
Well, there's one person from the team that is here. It's Revital. So if you also have questions, she's over there after for us. We're still building the team. I'm actually interviewing a lot of potential investors in France and Germany. But actually, there's still space. Like, if also you want to be part of that team, you can also still get in touch with us. We are interviewing with also Singa's leadership, because Singa is an international organization, and it's going to be part of this management company. Because Singa is an essential piece of that. We like the model of Make Sense and Serena Capital. We believe that an ecosystem like Make Sense or Singa is actually what makes a project like this successful. And so I'm interviewing also this team with Benoît Hamon and Fateme Jelani, which are the CEO and COO of Singa today.
Yeah, so if we have anyone in the audience who's looking for a good job, who has preferably maybe some immigration background or refugee background, get in touch with Guillaume. He didn't ask me to do this. I just thought, you're all here. It's not so easy to find this background, so let's put it out there. I'd love for you to share some examples of founders that you've seen through your years that have been really successful, as a way to wrap up this session.
Yeah, so I have two kinds of founders, because we have all the founders that are Europeans and that are building a venture to help migrants and refugees access education, access housing, access employment. One good example is a company that you can actually see at ChangeNOW. It's called Each One. They've built a recruitment cabinet, I don't know how you call this, HR solution, basically, to recruit refugees and new talents in your company. They've raised 5 million euros recently to be able to develop this company all over France. And so this would be also part of the thesis to support companies like Each One, Frelo, Meet My Mama that I was mentioning earlier. And then you have companies that are built by migrants and that are innovation in the field of education, health, finance, things that can actually change the game, respecting the sustainable development goals. And so one example that I like is Kaukab, which is a company created by Rais. He's a Syrian entrepreneur. When he arrived in France, one of the first things that he noticed is that we don't get rid of our metal waste. So we still have a fridge, we still have like something that we kept in the garage, or even companies in their courtyard, you will find tons of metal waste that they don't get rid of. And this waste could be reused, to produce something else. And so he started to build an ecosystem to be able to collect for free all this metal waste and sell it back to industrial leaders. And so it's actually a really successful ventures. They've been able to raise a pre-seed stage, and I think this would be the kind of company that I would invest in. Because it's circular economy. It's been built by someone that actually noticed this because he lived migration, and it's an idea from Syria that actually has been implemented in France. And also because he's really amazing as an individual and really ambitious, and that he could change the game in the metal waste industry. And I have other examples like Remotion Lab. It's a ed tech. They created solutions for universities to be able to organize des examens.
Anyone who's excellent in French and English?
Yeah. Anyway, so at the end of the year, you have to do an examen. I don't even remember how you call this. And so they organized this online during all the first lockdowns. And this is really high potential companies. They are taken in the best incubators everywhere. They've been through Singa, of course, but also School Lab, Station F. And what's missing is that even though they're really successful, no one invests in them. So that's what I want to change.
Okay. Perfect timing. Thank you so much, Guillaume, for sharing everything and teaching us a bit more about this vertical. And I'm sure you're going to be here parts of the day, so if anyone wants to grab Guillaume, then take that opportunity. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so this next part of the session, we're going to have a panel join me, and we're going to focus on a different vertical, which is also untapped. So Latin America is rich in entrepreneurs who are tackling deep social challenges that plague their society, and impact investors can play a very important role to guide that change. So please welcome to the stage Monica, Rodrigo, and Tina. Thank you. So I'm going to start by introducing our lovely speakers. So we have Monica, who's the head of strategy and impact investing at Social Nest Foundation, leading impact investing strategies. And before joining Social Nest, Monica worked leading investment strategies for a portfolio of high impact enterprises in the Latam region. And then we have Tina, who started her career in the banking sector at Credit Suisse, where she worked on strategic and business development initiatives for Latam market in Zurich and Mexico City. And then in 2017, she moved to Nairobi to work as a consultant for a portfolio company of elea, which is a Swiss philanthropic impact investor. And since 2018, she's back in Zurich and working as a director for elea. And last but not least, we have Rodrigo, who's very committed to transforming the private sector into one of the contributing solutions to the most pressing social and environmental issues. Founding partner of New Ventures Group, which is a leading impact investing organization across Latin America, and also founder of Adobe Capital, Vivala, Las Páginas Verdes de Ecofest, and Flee. And he's also a chairman of several organizations. Very busy man. So the way we're going to run this session is that I'm first going to ask 3 questions. And these are yes and no questions. So they are meant to be difficult to answer. They're pretty broad. But it's a way for us to just get started. And then we're going to go into more of a discussion format and build on those answers. So I'm going to start with Monica and the first question. So in your opinion, is the business climate, i.e. the way you do business in Europe and Latam compatible?
Yes.
Okay. And Tina?
Yes.
Rodrigo?
Yes.
Oh, no, you all agree. That's not good. Okay, second question. Are impact companies in Latam ready for investments? And I'm thinking both from local and international investors. I'll start with Monica again.
That's tough.
Yes.
I think yes, but I need to explain
no
later more.
Tina?
Depends, but I go for no to be different.
And Rodrigo?
Yes.
Yes.
I would say yes.
And then is the impact investor ecosystem, so actually the ecosystem of impact investors, well developed in Latin America?
I will say no.
Okay.
No.
No.
We're very aligned. Okay. So what we're actually going to first go into and discuss is what are some of the challenges and opportunities in Latin America. And Monica, I think I will start with you to maybe just talk a little bit about what you think are challenges and opportunities, and also maybe go a little bit into kind of the business climate and how you think that it's aligned.
Well, on the side of opportunities, I think that, the impact investing ecosystem in Latam is alive and is growing, and that's good. There is also a proof of a successful business that are that are committed to the progress of the region. That means that there are talent people there that is working for the region and that is running business, and they can apply those abilities and those experiences to take advantage of opportunities and to tackle the social and environmental challenges that the region that persist in the region, like inequality, that I think is the most important, and also violence, for example, increasing violence. But also there are challenges. I will say that in the side of impact investing, there is a challenge for startups at the early stage to get funding. And especially, I will say, on the most innovative business models, because in fact there are data that said that most of the investments in the impact investment in the regions has been on small or has increased investment in small businesses. However, these are more well-established small business, more than the ones that are creating there are more disruptive innovations. Another challenge, I think, is the need to provide more capital that is according to those needs. It means that it's not just to have capital for the most later stages companies. There is a need to provide, and there are few providers of that kind of capital. So that I think that I can share that. I'm going to leave something for my colleagues.
Yeah, go ahead.
I maybe want to follow on that point that you said with the lack of capital. And I think it's especially that missing middle that is lacking. So let's say around investments between around 50,000 to around 500,000 US$, where there's really a lack of funding. Especially from Europe, I think there's a lot of funding in microfinance. Actually, around 90% of the funding from Europe is microfinance, or then more later stage, as of 2 million and beyond, where it's easier to get capital. But in between, it's really hard, and it's also a very crucial phase for early stage companies to really scale. And one side is capital, yes, but the other side is really technical support. We heard it also in the other panel, that companies on that stage, they really need support on strategy, on governance, on really professionalizing the organization and prepare it to scale. And I think having investors that provide both, so the capital but also the support, is very crucial in that phase. And I think there's not that many active in Latin America yet.
Well, I think the problem with Latin America is that it's very diverse. Even though we speak mostly all the countries the same language, it's very diverse. So, for example, the last couple of years, I think Latin America has been the fastest growing region for traditional venture capital. So we had about 8 unicorns last year, which is unique, and the flow of venture capital it's just amazing. We have great entrepreneurs coming from, mostly of them are probably Latins that study abroad and had the chance to understand the lingo of the venture capital industry, and they're attracting a lot of investment. Mostly Brazil, Mexico. One of the problems we have is scale, because if you're like in a small country as Uruguay or Chile, probably you eventually need to scale to have a more global operation. And I think the companies that are using technology, they are achieving that. They are passing through all these barriers of regulations and scalability. On the other hand, you have a lot of impact entrepreneurs that are doing more things that has not that much technology, that you need more infrastructure. And that's when it gets complicated. And I think that's where you start competing with governments. We have a lot of populist countries in Latin America. And it's very challenging if you don't have like a very clear technology that is going to help you to scale. But the investment is there. I mean, if you have like a clear technology is growing, you find a solution with a good business model, the investors are there, even local or foreign investors. It's flowing a lot. We just have like a couple of months ago, like a Chilean company, it was the first social unicorn, this company called Betterfly. It just set up the way, show that you can do businesses that thrive in Latin America. So it's a great example. But again, it's one company, you know, we're a very large region. I think we need many more of those. But it still is like the tip of the iceberg, these entrepreneurs that have technology. Most of the impact entrepreneurs are not in that stage, and they need other sources of finance. They need more debt. I think we're missing a lot of debt. I think for entrepreneurs that are successful, there's a lot of equity, but I think we need to scale a lot of more traditional debt or revenue-based lending or other financial instruments to really support the entrepreneurs. And we need to find ways to support entrepreneurs also in smaller countries. You know, like Brazil, Mexico, Colombia are booming. But if you go to Central America, you go to Honduras, you go to Belize, I mean, there's pretty much nothing there. So there's a handful of successful entrepreneurs that were kind of lucky to study abroad and bring international investors, but locally there's nothing in some countries.
Can you talk a little bit about, with all the experience you have of the Latam market, which we now are bunching into one market, like you said, it's actually a lot of different countries. What is your experience over the last 10 years in terms of like how has social impact exploded through Latam, but maybe specifically which countries, which maybe is connected to the size of the country, but like where do you really see most of the development happening?
Well, I think entrepreneurs have... I have been working in the field for 18 years. And what I see a real change in the last probably 5 years is that entrepreneurs are they're just much more resourceful. I mean, there's more information. They have more access to international investors and to information. So, most of the entrepreneurs we're looking at now that are thriving in Latin America, they start from scratch with a very kind of fundraising spirit. So usually most of them are incorporated in Delaware. So entrepreneurs are, in the past you will find entrepreneurs that have been working for 5 years with very, not a lot of knowledge, a lot of kind of attitude to find a solution, but they were not that kind of successful. And right now entrepreneurs have a lot of information. They're very well organized. They're incorporated in the United States and they're ready to fundraise. I mean, it's completely different, the entrepreneurs you will find 5 years ago than the ones we're looking at now. And actually, we have a fund right now where we're investing in Colombia. And most of the successful entrepreneurs are oversubscribed. You really have to fight for, you have to have something else to be able to get in the rounds. So they're clearly looking for impact investors. But the ones that are successful, valuations are super high. And you have to provide something more than just money because there's a big flow of capital right now in Latin America.
Yeah. Tina or Monica, in the prep call, we talked about the need for catalytic capital, and you also mentioned the need of early stage finance. Do you want to say something more about that, like if you see it happening, or what needs to happen in terms to actually engage more catalytic capital? Should it come locally, or should it come internationally, or should it be a mix?
Well, I will say that in my experience, I have been working like 15 years on the impact investing sector, 12 of them in Latin America. I will say that a change that I saw, it was that when I started at the beginning and we talked with, I don't know, with potential investors in the sector, this combination of social goals, environmental goals, and financial returns, it was something that it was so new. And it was like taking like a crazy idea that maybe it's not the way that you are telling me. But now I think that the change it has been a change on that, because we have more local investments in the impact investing sector. But it's still, I think it's still little. It's still little. I think that is needed, like to more, as Rodrigo said, venture capital has grown a lot with local investors also, but not all the social or impact enterprises are created or have been created according to venture capital structures. So there is a need of new ways of investments, and there is a need to innovate in structures and in financial mechanisms. So I think that there is a need to provide more capital to those innovations, and that's what it's about. Catalytic capital. Catalytic capital means to have some kind of capital that is going that is capable to do concessions regarding financial returns, regarding to risk, and regarding to I don't know, for example, technical assistance. Like they can provide funding for technical assistance that Tina said before. So I think that kind of of funding is little. It's little still in the region, despite it has increased a lot since many years ago.
Okay, I'm going to switch gears a little bit to what are the best practices for providing funding and support to impact-driven companies. And I'd like to maybe start with you, Tina, because you were all very agreed when we talked about this session that one of the bigger things is really the need for investment readiness. And maybe you could talk a little bit about what that looks like, the need, and maybe solutions that are out there.
Yeah, sure. So maybe I can talk a little bit about our perspective from an elea side. So as I said before, we do invest capital, but at the same time we also invest or contribute in technical support. And in our case, for example, that means really working alongside the entrepreneurs in strategic topics or governance topics, for example. So we often also take a board seat when we invest, and then we work, 7 or even more years together with the entrepreneur, really on building, formalizing, making the implicit strategy explicit, and helping to really professionalize and making the organization ready for scale. I think that's from our perspective 2 areas we really support, and we see exactly in that middle or in that early growth phase, maybe beyond acceleration, where companies really need a lot of support. And I think at that stage it's really hard to also get that talent or expertise, or it's hard to afford it. So having investors or other stakeholders that help you with that, I think it's really important to then scale and really grow beyond a local business in a Latin American country.
Do you want to add, Rodrigo?
Well, in my perspective, like there was a generation of funds, like their vintage was probably 10 years ago when this new movement of impact investment started. And I think these funds that were like kind of opportunistic and general of impact investing are moving towards having more industry-oriented funds. So I think we need to have a deeper knowledge of where we're investing. I don't believe anymore that you can have just like a green and social fund that you invest in overall. It's when you said impact investing, it's so big. It's anything could be impact, and that's where it's getting a little bit more complicated. So I believe the new trend, what it needs to happen is to have funds that understand very well the market or industry they're trying to support. So I think we'll see a lot of funds finding a solution, and also combining the technical assistance with funding. But you need to understand what you're trying to solve, and so the financial mechanism should be should be according to the companies or to the sector you wanna support, and that's where I think there's a lot of innovation in Latin America, and we're seeing a lot of funds doing like revenue-based lending, mezzanine, quasi-equity. There are so many different innovations in terms of how you deploy resources in companies. We have a lot of issues. Again, it's a very large region with different countries. Currency risk it's a big problem. You know, for Europeans or U.S. investors going to Latin America, they always face that problem. You know, we have a lot of issues, and if you put the currency risk, you know, in our first fund, all our valuations were down like 50% just because of the currency. So you have to deal with finding good companies, make them successful, but you know, your environment drops you 50% just because of being in this region. So we need to find ways that you can find currency risk without you know, risking everything you did. I mean, there were so many funds that were super successful, and just because of the political environment or the economical environment, you lost pretty much 50% of the value. Yeah. So that's something we need to figure out how to solve it.
Do you want to add anything, Monica?
Yeah, I will say, well, I agree with Tina regarding to investment readiness support. For example, in our case, in ChangeNOW, we are now, we have been doing like investment readiness programs here in Europe since several years ago. Now we are going to do in Latin America as well, because we think that it's some kind of support that is still needed, and it's a good practice to invest on this kind of support. I would say that also a good practice is to, I don't know, to show evidence. I think that there is a need to, well, obviously impact measurement, but in fact also to have some platform for learning. That I don't feel that learning are being sharing on the ecosystem in Latin America, because
you mean shared in Latin America, or you mean from outside?
I'm saying share even inside Latin America in terms of build upon those learnings. And finally, I will say that it's good to have the practice to in terms of sector, not a portfolio management, like to have the support to educate and to inspire new investors, especially asset owners. Because my feeling in the last months, for example, we have been talking with several funds, impact investing funds that have a focus in Latin America, and most of them are doing fundraising, but they are doing fundraising with the same people. So I think that a good practice is to continue to have some kind of organizations that are going to inspire and educate these investors. That's why we have at ChangeNOW our platform that is called FI, which is a platform that we create for that, in order to inspire, starting with European investors, European asset owners that can deploy capital or can be interested in Latin America, and as a way to learn and as a way to connect with the funds or other investors in order to start a path of impact investing in Latin America. So, yeah, I think that's something
that's a very good segue into the last thing that I really want us to talk about, which is why it's a good opportunity for European asset owners to mobilize capital towards Latin America. So I think maybe just this platform, but
yeah,
of course more.
Yeah,
things.
Maybe something short that is. I think that there is an opportunity to decrease or to address the gap of inequality. There is I think that investing in Latin America is a way to reduce inequality in the world, because Latin America is one of the most inequality regions. Also, I think it's a way to get innovation, because I don't know, problems and challenges and social and environmental challenges are like opportunities to create new things. So investors that are interested in Latin America have the opportunity to be part of that innovation movement.
So I really think there's a huge opportunity for Europe to invest in Latin America. I think also, when we look at the digitalization or technology development in Latin America, I think the pandemic has really fast-forwarded a lot of the or the use and dissemination of technology. And I think that's also the basis for many of these early and small impact companies to scale. Because if you think about models that work with small-scale farmers or informal retailers, if you don't have mobile payment or really the technology, it's so hard to make the model work and even grow beyond the borders. So I really think that the past 2 years have shown that, or there's a lot happening on the technology side. So the basis to really for other models to work. And when we look, for example, compare it to Africa, that's what really made the ecosystem grow in Africa too. So I think now is a very, very good opportunity for Latin America as well. And on the other side, one aspect I want to mention is that the pandemic obviously also had a very detrimental effect on many countries in Latin America. And it's really now these smaller companies are essential, crucial really to build up the countries again. And because on the one hand side, they really, most of the impact ventures, they bring a new way of doing business, right? It's a new capitalism, let's say, that they bring to the world. And on the other hand, it's a lot of the employment opportunities as well. So I think these small impact ventures, or generally small companies in Latin America, are really needed to rebuild basically the countries and grow a strong middle class after the pandemic. So in summary, I think these two aspects make it really interesting now for Europeans to invest in Latin America.
Thank you.
Well, I think, as Monica said, Latin America is one of the regions with more inequality. So there's a lot of challenges, a lot of problems we have, but we need to shift our mindset and stop seeing those things as problems, and we should see those problems as business opportunities. And if we have the shift on our minds and on our investment thesis, I think Latin America is one of the regions of the world that can deliver better returns on both in revenues and also in impact. So there's a lot of talented people, there's a lot of entrepreneurs, there's a lot of opportunities. So I think it's a really good destination for European money to move towards Latin America. I think for many years Europeans have looked more into Africa, into Asia, but I think it's time for Europeans to start looking at Latin America, and you'll see the great partners, a lot of talented and both asset managers and also entrepreneurs. So I think it's a Latin America moment right now.
I'm actually going to let that be the last words, because I think it was a perfect ending. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise about Latin America, and I hope we engage some people to look closer into it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So thank you to this whole panel, and now we're going to move into the last piece of this session, where we're going to look at some concrete examples of innovative investment models. So I'm now welcoming, if I can find the right page, here we go. I'm now welcoming Laurence up to the stage. So in this part, let you come here. Yeah, so I can see you. So in this part, we're going to talk about social impact bonds, the importance of continuing to explore new investment models beyond private equity to address major deep impact issues. And I'm going to introduce Laurence briefly as well. She's a co-founder and chairman of, well, I would like to say chairwoman of Citizen Capital, one of the leading and pioneering French impact investing funds. She has a very passionate role about business in society, as co-initiated a French NGO, which I'm not sure I can pronounce, so I will let you talk about that, which has a mission and is currently, enterprise mission, is currently a board member. Prior to this, Laurence had a key role since 2003 in promoting diversity in France, co-authored and launched a diversity chart in 2004, advised the French ministry in charge of equal opportunity in 2005-2006, and then went on to launch the Citizen Capital in 2008 with her partner. So we're going to start out by digging a little bit into the personal side as to where did the drive to use the power of capital to drive change in society and social and environmental come from for you? Like, where did this start? No. Sorry?
Hello? Oh.
No. Okay.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Laurence Mehaignerie, and so what did it start? Where did it start with? Well, I grew up in a family where politics were important, and I think we talked about, I'd say, public policy issues at every meal, and so I couldn't imagine myself in a professional career that was not linked somehow to general purpose. And I naturally thought I was going to work in the public sphere. And that's where I started. But then something went wrong and brought me to finance. But there was absolutely no reason I could... This is an accident that I'm actually in investing, because I graduated in urbanism and sociology. So this is an entrepreneurial initiative. And how did I come to this is I worked as a research fellow for a think tank that's called Institut Montaigne in France. And I worked on equal opportunity issues and diversity. I thought at that point that the public policies in France were not adapted to what France had become, a multicultural country, and that the way we treated social mobility and diversity was not an efficient way and was not good to our economy, to the country. And so we recommended a certain amount of public policies on this, some inspired by what happened in the UK or in the United States. And my mother is American, so I always like to look towards the US. And when we launched this report, I noticed how the private sector got really interested in the recommendations, and I was working for the public. I thought the public policies were going to change with this, but they did not. And what did change is how companies regarded diversity issues, and a lot changed in these beginning of 2000 years in France. And so it was a very exciting moment. But then I had an experience in a ministry cabinet on equal opportunity issues, and it was very frustrating. And I thought, I've got to jump in the private sector, and I wanted to be my own boss and create something where I could still focus on public issues, but from the private sector, which is very new for me at that point. And it's looking into what happened in the UK and the US. At that point, I discovered that there was a use of capital and what they called social venture at the time. Impact investing wasn't a name yet. And we launched Citizen Capital in 2008, so 14 years ago. We called it social venture at the time, and we have a strong social drive, which now is both social and environmental. And we started with this idea that capital as well as profit, as essential as they are for most of the economy, cannot be the purpose. And their means. They are means for mission to answer needs. And these 50 past years, I had the sense that finance was more linked to, profit as a purpose and not profit as a mean.
Do you feel, because I don't know exactly who's here, so I also want us to be inspiring in terms of just taking leaps into things that you don't really necessarily know or are educated for. But do you think it was useful for you to not actually have the financial background, so in terms of creating this new structure that you created, or do you think that it just made it more difficult?
Well, now that I look back, I would say that at the time I didn't know that it was impossible to enter the finance with no background, financial background. And maybe because I didn't know that, it made it possible. And I'm happy I didn't know what was going to come after this. But probably when you don't have the standards, the reflexes, the norms of an industry, maybe you can more easily bring new ideas in this industry. And of course, I could have never launched Citizen Capital alone. I did this with my partner who had over 10 years of experience in private equity. But the two of us together, I think, made it possible to convince some investors at the time that it was worth trying. And we were in the middle of the 2008 crisis at the time. And some investors, very few, were sensible to this, to the idea that we had to explore new ways, new investment paths, and giving 1 or 2 or 3 millions to Citizen Capital start with was a sort of exploration at the beginning for the investors.
And do you want to talk briefly about how it was innovative and how what you've done in the past 15 years has led to these new projects that we're also going to talk about?
Well, I'd say for the 10 past years, we spent most of our energy in investing in companies, so mainly startups and SMEs. We invested, at first, 1, 2, or 3 millions. Now a bit more. We invest from 3. Well, in fact, now we have an early stage fund, so we invest from 500,000 euros to 8 million. But at the time, what we spent our energy in was showing evidence to our investors that impact is actually part of value creation, or could be part of value creation. And we wanted to show that it was possible to have tangible, measurable, strong impact at the core of the business models, while giving back returns, financial returns to our investors. And I think we made it now. Our fund 2 has a great track record. We're lucky, I think, to be in a good cycle also. There's a lot of luck in this. But we have made emblematic investments. And 10 years after this, we came back to the table, all 16 of us, we're now 16, and said, well, we're Société à Mission. We adopted the legal framework in France for mission-driven companies. And thinking about what are the goals of our purpose, what do we want to do in these 10 next years, we decided we are very proud and happy to have main core funds that are profitable. And we showed this, and we're happy and we'll continue to do it. But next to that, we believe our role is not only to have bigger and bigger private equity impact funds, it's to keep on, this is what I said also yesterday, to keep on exploring new investment paths, to answer new needs that are poorly served by the market. And then we think about the business model. It's always this idea of profits, capital is a mean, and it's not a purpose in itself. So if the business model is hard, okay, can we find one? So one, we have 3 going on now. So it's maybe a lot at the same time, but 3 new projects, innovative. One is a social impact bond fund. I don't know if you are familiar with social impact bond, but
I think you should explain a little bit about this.
A social impact bond rewards a social provider, which mainly are NGOs, and its investors, if and only if a social outcome that is determined at the beginning of the transaction is achieved. So we believe that today, in France, you still need 6 generations to come out of poverty. There's still 40% of unemployed people among job seekers and with very low qualification. And you need 3 planets. If you live like a Frenchman, you need 3 planets. So we know that startups and SMEs won't do it all, that blue chip companies won't do it all, and the state won't do it all. And we need NGOs exploring new transformative solutions where there's no business model as we would know it in traditional private equity. And we believe that linking public and private together, because the state is very active in this. They're commissioners. And now in France, there's 25 projects on the market for social impact bonds. And this fund aims to finance some of these. And the model of a social impact bond for investors is very different from a traditional impact fund in private equity. It's more or less preserving your capital. You invest 100, you get back 100 plus a little interest, but small. And you have the impact you would have with philanthropy. And you can recycle this money. You take back your, and the duration is pretty short because it's a 2-year investment. The deal flow is already there because the state has selected the NGOs that can scale their impact. And the whole issue is about drastically improving social efficiency of public spending. So I'm coming back to my original interest is I believe that states and public spending is still very important, and private companies won't do it all. And so...
Well, can I ask, what do you think is what is the challenge with social impact bonds? Because when you're telling us about it, it sounds great. But what is there a difficulty?
Oh yeah, big difficulties. Yeah. Well, it's very hard to raise a fund because there's very little return. And people know philanthropy, people know impact funds, but this is somewhere in between. It's not philanthropy, though we're not ticking the usual boxes.
Oh no.
So we have to explain, and it's pretty long to explain. I just took 5 minutes explaining this. It's a bit complicated. So there's a maturity. So it's one of these. But that's what happened, in fact, for impact investing 15 years ago. We had to explain for hours just for people to understand what we were talking about.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to do. Continue doing. Exploring new paths is also taking time to convince investors that it's worth it. And maybe to take one example we're looking at is an NGO that's... These are very entrepreneurial NGOs, in fact. We consider there are entrepreneurs at the top. Like Singa was a very good example. This NGO is called Wake Up Cafe, and they reduce reoffending in prison, and through quick professional inclusion. So they partner with companies that are ready to include former prisoners as workers. And the social impact bond is linked. It will succeed with 3 impact KPIs, which are that the former prisoners go through the support program and graduate, that they find a job no more than 3 months after the support program, and the final impact is reducing reoffending to 10% for all the beneficiaries, which are, I think, 1,500. Whereas reoffending in France today is 31%. Okay. And reoffending is very costly for state. It costs a lot. So this is about social efficiency.
Yeah.
And scaling impact for NGOs that are very dependent on grants and short-term grants So now they have a 5-year vision on the investment in scaling their impact.
I'd love to actually stay on this topic for an hour, but I want to give you the opportunity to also talk about this other, well, the second one of the three that you're now working on, which is this diversification for farmers, because that is also an innovative model. So just tell us a little bit about what that is and how the model is also innovating.
Yes, we recently stepped in the agriculture universe, sector. We raised a 30 million fund, which is open to investment still, to back projects that are supported by farmers. That means farmers are in the capital, but that are not the farming business. So it's going beyond the farming business, and it's financing typically on-farm processing, like cheese factories, I don't know how to say it, vegetable factories. It's local and short circuits, food circuits, like producer stores. And it's renewable energy production, like biogas. We're looking into windmills also, and probably solar initiatives backed by farmers. And this program is very interesting because it's very new that farmers talk to investors. So it's a whole new relation that we're starting with farmers that drastically need to have more revenue. This is the first impact thesis of this fund, is enabling farmers to get more value in the food chain value, where they're totally essential, but they get pretty little value out of it compared to other actors in this chain value chain, maybe. Value chain. And we know there's 20% of farmers today in France that are poor, which means they have less than 10,000 euros per annual. And the annual revenue, medium revenue, is low. And there's big disparities. There's also rich farmers, but this is to help farmers build new projects beyond farming, and this is also the opportunity to back them in ecological transition. In French, you say agroécologique, but in transition, environmental transition. So we're bringing tools like, for example, quality of land, which is a big issue now. The lands are bad, getting bad quality. We're trying to bring them tools to make it more easy for them, and to finance part of this work and investments they have to make to do the transition.
We are actually out of time, so you can find Laurence here today, I hope, and ask her about the last initiative, and also ask more questions about social bonds, because I'm sure there are plenty, and also about this last innovative model. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone that participated on the panel and speaking on this session, and thank you to the audience for coming. Thanks.